All right. Well, welcome to the first ever YouTube live segment of the Winter's Dozen podcast. Uh, this is going to be an interesting thing to start off with. In theory, it should work where I have the audio recording and I will release that as a separate podcast, and also the video is recording if everything is working right. As you can see, I have a very beautiful office setup up here. So we're just going to get right into what I'm going to be previewing total for the end of this podcast. Well, middle chunk. I don't know how fucking long this is going to be. It might be 10 minutes. It might be 20. It might be 30. Who knows? But what I'm going to be trying to do is try to theorize, because every year at the end of the year, fantasy rosters come out or championship rosters are profiled. It's so weird to watch myself talk and a video of myself, so I'm going to close that out. So at the end of the year, always there's going to be like common players on fantasy rosters, and last year for championship on fantasy rosters. So last year, I believe that like the most common player was Alvin Kamara, which is, if you drafted him, you'd be very, very good fantasy player. Or if you picked him up most likely on the waivers first week, most likely you're going to be in the championship or had won the championship. Now, in our case, sorry to throw some shade on you right now, but the guy who ended up finishing last in our league actually had Alvin Kamara. He picked him up very early in the year. Sorry, channel, but that's just, case. That's just, it's the truth. But as of right now, what I'm going to be doing is, as a Packer fan, I have to at least get a little bit of shit out, because last night was yet another frustrating ass loss to watch from every standpoint. Now, everyone can throw the blame on Mike McCarthy, and I'm going to be doing so very shortly, but let's not lose sight of the fact that I don't normally do this, because I'm usually a gigantic homer and I'm a gigantic defender, but the stats show that Aaron Rodgers played outrageously good, which he did for some stretches. But he also missed a lot of plays, and that's where that 130 whatever quarterback rating he had is a little misleading, because even the throws that he did make to Devontae Adams were primarily Devontae Adams, and it's because Rodgers was able to get him there. You can take it, give and take a little bit, but he did miss MVS late in the game. He missed plenty of checkdowns to Aaron Jones, which I'll get to him in a second as well. That Robert Tonyan fucking throw was just outrageous, and that's what you get with Aaron Rodgers. And these are where the things where I am a little bit, lenient, because some of the times that he does that dick around in the pocket and just fire it up, that's what you get when he does that, but to the detriment sometimes, which is like last night. It was a pretty big detriment where he says the ball stuck in his hands, and it might have, but he did throw it right in the dirt when MVS was open, standing on the, past the first down line. That just brings me to this next thing, where I do believe this loss is solely on Mike McCarthy's shoulders again, because I was just speaking with a few people today at work, and being in Wisconsin, everyone watches the fucking Packers. It's just a thing you do. And what the fuck was I even going to say? Oh, my point is that people are saying, well, this was on Rodgers. This was on Rodgers. That was on Rodgers. Not my. Okay, fine. Let's just do a fucking thought experiment here. You trade Mike McCarthy, or you cut Mike McCarthy at the beginning of the year, whatever the fucking term is, fire him. There it is. Fire him. And the Packers are probably right around where they're at right now, or maybe better. I don't see a scenario where they're any worse with a different coach. You understand what I'm saying? And if you trade Aaron Rodgers in the beginning of the year, or he's not playing all year, this is a vastly different team. So to blame somebody like Aaron Rodgers on this loss, which, it's viable, it's valid. He definitely deserves some of the blame. And Mike McCarthy called a pretty decent game. A lot of people are bitching about the Aaron Jones not getting enough runs, and you have a point there. Coming off of the biggest running output of the year, over 200 yards, and you end up the next game from a lead standpoint, you run the ball the least amount of times in your coaching career, which was, I think, 13, and one of those was a scramble. So you can call 12 designed runs. That shit just isn't fucking acceptable. I mean, yeah, you want a ball to be thrown by Aaron Rodgers, and that's great, but this is a different team right now. It's not obviously not clicking, so you got to do something different. And if that means running the ball 30 fucking times with Aaron Jones, that's what you do. You don't see the Rams shying away from Todd Gurley. Yes, Aaron Jones caught the ball 6 times. You've still got to get the ball to him more, because let's say, he averaged what, 3.8 yards a carry, something like that. On 11 carries, that's just not a good enough sample size, because you see what he can do on that block in the back call. You got to get him the ball more. He's always due to get busted out. He busts out runs. You can't go away from, especially being up the majority of the game. Now, you can also say about the timeout situation at the end of the game, fine. And you shouldn't be in that position. But when that play is even a little bit questionable to Tyler Lockett deep, or was it David Moore? Don't really remember. Where I'll even say it's questionable. I think it was a drop, but again, it's one of those things that I'm not 100% sure on, so I'm going to just, give it to the refs in that decision. You have to fucking challenge that play, regardless if you have a timeout or not. I mean, obviously, if you don't have a timeout, you can't challenge it. I'm saying if you only have one timeout, what was it, 5 minutes left at that point? It's 5.5. Rodgers has done way more with less time and no timeouts. You have to trust him in that aspect. You got to be like, okay, well, we'll burn this fucking timeout if it this is a different game if that play doesn't happen. For the sake of argument, let's say they challenge, he loses, fine. Seattle still scores, same amount of time. Okay, even still, you get the ball back with 4 minutes left, and Aaron Rodgers has the ball. That is plenty of fucking time to go down without a timeout. Even to a further point, 3rd and 2, you throw that little thing. Why aren't you running the ball there? First of all, if it even was even in your mind that you might go for it on 4th down. 3rd and 2 on the 30, whatever it was, 28, I don't know. Fucking go for it there, man. You have 2 of your best run defenders, both out. You have Antonio Morrison, who's playing well, is your starting, because Blake Martinez is hobbled. You have a fucking shell of a defense that didn't play that poorly, I don't believe, with what they had. Against the best running defense, you need to fucking go for it there. On first look, it's like, okay, yeah, punt. But then you think about it, it's like, well, what if they don't? Like, what's the worst that can happen? They fucking score again? Well, then, I don't know. I'm just thoroughly not impressed with the amount of times that this comes down to this, where, well, he should have done this, he should have done that. Yeah, he called a pretty good game otherwise, except this, that, and the other thing. It's like, well, at what point is it just not acceptable anymore? And that's where the problem with not having an owner, and, I love the way the Green Bay Packers do things, and, publicly own, it's great, but not having a strong voice in there to be like, yeah, this shit is unacceptable. We need to fucking get rid of him now, or something to that effect. His offense is fucking ancient. Let's say Aaron Jones is on any other team other than the Packers. Andy Reid is giving the ball to Aaron Jones 25 times a game. You have an absolute dynamic Alvin Kamara, Todd Gurley type player. And yes, that is a lofty fucking comparison. But I do believe Aaron Jones is that fucking talented. He is outrageously talented. You see stuffed runs that you don't even notice, that he'll bounce and get 7-8 yards. Some of the times he gets hit 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and will still get to like 1 or 2 yards. He's just dynamic. And you can't continue to just let him fucking marinate. What are you waiting for now? You're 4-5, 4-5-1. You legitimately have to win 6 straight games to even have a thought of the playoffs right now. And this is a Super Bowl type of team. You saw it with the Rams. They didn't play 60 minutes. Well, imagine that. What is that on? Is that on the players? Yeah, somewhat. That's on the fucking coaching, I believe. So, all right. We'll be done with the Packers talking from now. And, I just needed to get that out there because I love cathartic talking. You just got Mike McCarthy's press conference and he's, I thought we played a good football game. We got to get Aaron the ball a little bit more. Yeah, I considered running. Some to that effect. All the bullshit coach speak that he does, never takes ownership. Throws Aaron Rodgers under the bus where, we're holding on the ball too long. Aaron knows that. Some bullshit. Okay, we're done with that. All right, done with the Packers. Okay, so here is Winter's Dozen, my prediction of the most common type of player that is on your fantasy roster that is going to be in the championship or winning the championship. And I do believe it comes down to a few people. And this is just pretty much exactly just my opinion. This has nothing to do with consensus ratings. Things that probably happen throughout the year. Yes, this is based a little bit on how our league is going. But, okay. So first off, I'm going to be doing the champ guy, and then I'm going to be going to the guy who maybe missed the playoffs second. Okay, so for quarterback, the obvious one to say is Pat Mahomes, and I'm going to say that that's the one that's going to be a most common quarterback on fantasy championship rosters. But the problem with the quarterback position is, even though he is the clear best quarterback right now, he still is on the worst team or one of the worst teams in our league. This is pretty common, I would say, along most fans. I mean, quarterback is such a weird position where you could have the stud best quarterback ever on your roster, and he's still only outscoring the second best after the end of the year by like 4 or 5 points. Like there's not a huge drop off between number 1 and number 5 this year, especially. Yeah, Pat Mahomes is great, and he's fucking great and fun to watch, and he'll win you fucking weeks for sure, for sure. Any guy that can score 50 points, take a third of your fantasy points, is a guy that's going to be on most fantasy rosters. But I do believe the quarterback position is going to be the most volatile. Like if there's percentage, I would say he's going to be on like 12% of fantasy championship rosters. This guy that I'm going to be talking about next is probably going to be much higher. As far as running backs or wide receivers goes, I just believe there's just difference. I don't know. It's not on my belief. It's fucking fact. Quarterback is pretty much from front to back is going to be a position that's not very variable by the end of the year standards. And that could mean there's any reason for that. But I think that it's a very easy thing to call when you're talking about players that are on your roster that missed the playoffs. I believe these two guys in particular are going to be on a lot of players, and mine included, and I'm in jeopardy of losing and being not in the playoffs because I drafted one of these guys. I believe it's going to be Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson are going to be two common quarterbacks on rosters that missed the playoffs. And that is because most likely you drafted them with higher than a 5th round pick or a 6th, we'll say very conservatively. And even still, 6th and higher is a pretty high fucking draft pick in terms of fantasy football. There's a lot of running back 2s, wide receiver 2s that are available at that time. Russell Wilson has not performed. He's been fine, but he's not performing at the place you drafted him. And this is where I failed big time. And I do believe Deshaun Watson is the same fucking way. He's a guy that you could have passed on and picked up a fucking Jared Goff in the 12th round and been better off for it. He's outscored. I mean, Christ, what is Russell Wilson, like the 12th best quarterback, if I had to guess? Deshaun Watson's probably the 9th or 10th. Yeah, they're fine quarterbacks. I like them both. I really like Deshaun Watson's game. He hasn't done a great job this year, but I mean, Christ, his team's fucking 6-3. But I just think that that's going to be a common occurrence because you wasted such a high draft pick on someone. And if you didn't hit on later round picks, those two guys are going to crush your fantasy team. So Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson are common among missed the playoff type of rosters. Now, once it gets into the running back wide receiver landscape, missed ones are going to be much harder to predict because chances are, if you did have an underperforming player, you've either moved on, you've traded, or like you said, you just cut him at, like in Le'Veon Bell's case. I can't say he's a common draft pick among teams that missed the playoffs because chances are you fucking were smart and traded him early and got some capital for him. Yeah, hindsight, you're smart. But those guys that waited, well, he's not on the roster anymore. So it's hard to say that he's, you understand what I'm saying? So it's a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to probably more focus primarily on guys that are going to be on fantasy rosters. The first one might surprise you because this could go legitimately either way. I do believe that David Johnson is going to be a guy that's going to be on a lot of championship teams just because they changed coordinators. Byron Leftwich has that team actually looking decent offensively. And two, if you had a good team already, there's a good chance you had a good risk factor. You were able to absorb that risk factor better than somebody who was reeling early in the season, who had David Johnson, who was not performing. So that's why I'm saying he's going to be on a lot of championship rosters, is because I do believe if you had that risk factor in our respect, Jeremy did. And he's like, well, fuck, I can absorb a shittier player for a couple of mediocre players. I'm 8-1, or at the time he was like 6-0, something like that. Then you took on that risk, and now he's being David Johnson. Or you waited on him, and you were able to build and survive at 4-4 or whatever until this change happened. So I believe David Johnson is going to be a very, very, very common player on championship teams. Whereas in the beginning of the year, it looked to be pretty fucking dire because David Johnson was not performing at all. Now, this guy, Melvin Gordon, is going to be another one I do believe is going to be on a lot of fantasy championship rosters because simply for the fact that he fell in the first round, or he was projected about 10th, 8th, 10th, something like that. So you got a running back, what is he, number 2 right now behind Gurley in terms of scoring? And you were able to pair that with a guy like Christian McCaffrey. In my case, it was fucking Jordan Howard. I pissed the bet on that one. I traded Jordan Howard for Corey Davis earlier in the season. So I kind of saw this projection happening where Tariq Cohen snaps were going up, Jordan Howard's were going down. Jordan Howard was not performing. This team is a passing offense now. Wasn't able to pair him with anybody that great. But, if you were better than me at drafting, you might have taken a Christian McCaffrey or a stud wide receiver in that aspect, or in that position. So Melvin Gordon's going to be on a lot of fantasy championship rosters at the end of the season. He's simply scoring a shit ton of touchdowns, which he was lacking earlier in his career. He's catching the ball a lot, which is huge especially in PPR leagues. He's getting a lot of yards. He's just a fucking bell cow, and he is a guy that will probably be the number 2 overall pick next year. Maybe you can say Kamara. I don't know. I think it's going to be Gurley 1 for sure. You can't not pick Gurley number 1 at this point in the season. I'm not even going to say Todd Gurley because, yeah, of course he's going to be on a lot of championship rosters. But, next year is going to be very weird because there's going to be 4 or 5 guys you can take at the number 2 spot. You'd be very nice pick to take Melvin Gordon. Wherever Le'Veon Bell ends up, he's still worthy of a second overall pick rather. Alvin Kamara is right there. Ezekiel Elliott is quietly having a very good year, fantasy-wise, because he's catching the ball more. And who else are you going to put in there? You could put David Johnson. I don't think he's going to go number 2 next year. I think he'll probably be around the 6-7 range, but he's still a very viable player. There's a lot of things that are going to happen. So Melvin Gordon going to be on a lot of championship rosters. So for the losses, I want to say Le'Veon Bell, but again, like I said, he's not on anybody's roster right now, especially in redraft leagues. Hey, look at that. I took a sip and it's going to be on the podcast because I'm not editing right now. So anyway, I think the number one guy that's going to be on a lot of missed the playoff type of rosters is going to be Mark Ingram. He's played well in a couple games, but you also remember you lost 4 weeks of a top, sixth round pick? And then he's been pretty bad for a few of them. I mean, less than 5 points bad. That the team isn't suffering. He's not playing bad, but from a fantasy perspective, Mark Ingram is going to be a guy that is risky, and he's a guy that you were drafting to be a running back one. Reasoning being you picked him high, even with the knowledge of the 4 games missed, or 3, I don't remember. I think it was 4. So you already were at a disadvantage at the beginning of the year. But I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be pretty common because it's not like you're trading him. I mean, I don't really, unless you flipped him right away after that big game, might have been a smart move. But I think that he's going to be on a lot of rosters that did not make the playoffs this year. The other one, Jordan Howard, is a guy that comes to mind because he's probably going to be a 6th, 7th round pick next year. And I mean, he was anywhere from 2 to 3.5 this year. 3rd round, 3.5, something like that. Anywhere as high as 2.4. He's just a guy that has not performed at all. I mean, he's scoring a few touchdowns here and there. But as far as the guy you drafted him to be, that 250 carry, 1,200 yard player, not happening. And he was rumored to have been catching the ball more. Obviously not the case when you have a guy that's as dynamic as Tariq Cohen on the Bears offense. That is a fucking great offense now. Did not see that coming whatsoever. Bears are a tough team. Mitch Trubisky is still the quarterback, so I would proceed with caution as a Bears fan. Watching as much football as I have, I know certain things are true, and that is Bears fall apart and Lions fall apart. So I hope it happens because as a Packer fan, I hope that they shit the bed a few times and, regress more towards the mean. But right now they're fucking clicking, and Jordan Howard is not involved in that equation. It is a Tariq Cohen show. Yeah, he's the goal line back. Mitch Trubisky's the fucking goal line back, if you ask me. He's getting so many rushing yards, so many touchdowns. He's just a great fucking quarterback. And from a fantasy perspective, it's hard for me to say that because I was so dead wrong about that as well. And I'm wrong about a few things. I'm going to be bringing that up. I'm not a guy that sits here and says, well, I was always right. Like some of these fucking idiot people on Instagram or wherever that they say, well, we were 12-1 last year or last week. No, you fucking weren't. Fuck you. Okay, so let's go. Jordan Howard is a guy that's going to be on common missed playoff rosters. So for the winning guys that are going to be these 2 wide receivers that I do believe are going to be on a lot of them. One is Davante Adams. He is far outperforming where he was drafted. And I was pretty critical of Channel drafting him at, I think, the 12th overall pick, 13th, whatever it ended up being. I know he had the 12th pick. Drafted him in the 1st round or first pick of the 2nd round, whatever you want to say. That seemed a little high to me just because his ADP was probably right around 2.6, 2.7. I'm like, oh, he's risking there. That's not a risk. That dude is a fucking bona fide top 3 wide receiver now. He is catching balls that Aaron Rodgers isn't even putting near him. Yesterday, he was wide open down the sideline. Rodgers underthrows him severely, still jumps up and gets it. Davante Adams is a guy that he's already almost at 1,000 yards, over 50 catches, 8 touchdowns, 9 touchdowns. I mean, he is a fantasy fucking stud that you can rely on to get you 20 points a week. And a guy that most likely you drafted semi-late, 2nd round, something to that effect where you're like, so you pair him up with another stud for sure. And that's another reason why I think Adam Thielen is the same thing, because he was looked at as a guy that had a fluky season last year. This this guy he's a good story. He's good. He's a fucking legitimate beast out there. He catches his catch radius reminds me of like Jordy Nelson in 2013. You know, the white guy. I get it, but the ball's anywhere near him, he's catching that fucking thing. What did he have? 8 straight 100-yard games. He's been kind of falling off as of late, but if you have Adam Thielen on your roster, you got him as a second wide receiver most likely, and you paired him with another beast wide receiver. So you have that scoring threat from 2 different players at your own position. He's a wide receiver 1. Next year, he's drafted potentially in the first round. He's that fucking good. And he's going to be on a lot of teams that win the title this year. Now, again, with the missed playoff type of player, I hesitate saying Larry Fitzgerald because I think he also has equal amount of opportunity to be on the championship roster as a flex player. He's reliable again. At the beginning of the year, he was on pace for like 30 catches and 500 yards and no touchdowns. And I was legitimately considering cutting him, but I'm like, okay, well, it is Larry Fitzgerald. He has a dog shit offensive coordinator, Mike McCoy. Quarterback is a rookie. It's going to be bad for a little bit. Just weather the storm. So either you traded him for low, and at that point you bought him for very low, and you pair him now with some good wide receivers, depending on who you traded for. You have a legitimate 15-point plus player at your flex position. So that's why I think it's pretty common that he might be on a lot of at least playoff rosters. So it's hard for me to even say that he would, but he was drafted pretty high for underperforming for the most part. But if you stuck with him, might be on your roster. I'm not even going to say Stephon Diggs on this next one because it's just hard for me to say anything about wide receivers. There's so many wide receivers available this year, especially, that even if you drafted a Larry Fitzgerald, a Chris Hogan, like I did, you probably were able to piece together some other wide receivers. In my case, Corey Davis, he's finally coming on, but you're able to find a way to weather that storm because there's 20, 30 wide receivers that you can probably start on a week-to-week basis that have the upside of a wide receiver 1 with the floor of a wide receiver 3. There's just a lot of middling wide receivers this year to where a bad wide receiver draft pick was not going to ruin you at all. Doug Baldwin, drafted him pretty high. You can still weather that storm by picking someone else up or for anything. Running back is the most important thing as far as who's on a lot of rosters as far as championship rosters go. To kind of close it out here, I'm going to say for tight end, it's another one of those positions that, I mean, if you drafted Gronk early, you picked up another tight end and you just stream him now, which I've done all year. I didn't draft Gronk in the main league, but I've pretty much been able to stream the position and not been that bad with it. And if you have Gronkowski, you found a way to weather that storm. So again, Rob Gronkowski was not going to ruin you. He had the opportunity of being the best tight end available, and he was. He's still, in my opinion, the best tight end in the game. But you're able to weather that. So I think, yes, it's probably going to be common that he's going to be on a lot of rosters that don't make the playoffs. But if you are a guy that was smart all year and was able to weather that storm, he's going to be on a shit ton of championship rosters also, because he might be coming on late. And now you have a stud tight end that you can even flex with another tight end or whatever, however the case may be. Rob Gronkowski, it's just tough to say that he's going to be on a lot of rosters that are going to miss the playoffs, which he may be, though. He may be. But the number one tight end that is going to be on a lot of winning rosters is going to be Zach Ertz. The guy had a fucking 40-point game from a tight end position, which is absolutely unheard of. I think he has 3 of the top 10 all-time tight end performances. He's their only wide receiver that's reliable. He catches fucking everything, and he's got the touchdown upside every week. I mean, you look at the projected points. Most tight ends are 12, 10, 9. Zach Ertz is near 20 every week, which is, you can say what you want about projections, but whatever. And I'm not going to say fucking kickers on who you drafted. Unless you drafted Justin Tucker in the 10th round, you're a fucking idiot and you're not going to make the playoffs anyway. So if you drafted Justin Tucker above the 10th round or higher, I have a very high probability that you're not going to make the playoffs at all, ever. Don't ever draft the kicker. You don't even need to draft one. But I do think that the defense that most people stream defenses. They're one of the number one players claimed each week unless a running back injury happened. Matchup wise, let's say a team's playing Oakland, a team's playing Buffalo. They're always right there as the top claim. But if you draft the Jacksonville Jaguars, after last year, they won a lot of people's leagues. This year, they've underperformed, and you probably drafted them 12th round or higher. So you lost out on another player. You might have been able to weather that storm. You might have cut bait. But most likely what you have done is started them every week because you're like, they're the fucking Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars, however you pronounce the fucking thing. They've just underperformed from a fantasy perspective and from a real life perspective also. So I think that they're going to be on a lot of teams that missed the playoffs this year because you didn't just get the Jaguars easily. You drafted them pretty high and you've probably hung on to them. It's not like you're trading defenses. The MVP, the guy that's going to be most common on everybody's championship roster, and I will fully admit that I am fucking wrong big time. I was pretty against this in the beginning of the year. I'm like, God, just pump the fucking brakes. Le'Veon's coming back. It's James Conner. He's proven to me that he is a fucking absolute monster, fantasy-wise. Randy will figure a way to fuck it up, and he won't win the title this year. Let's mark my words there. Randy's not winning the fucking title, even with Todd Gurley and James Conner. Still find a way to fuck it up because that's just Randy. But I'm just kidding, Randy. I'm just fucking kidding, Randy. Jesus Christ. You either picked up James. He's last year's Alvin Kamara. He's a running back one that was 10th rounder later, most likely 15th rounder later, waiver wire person. So there you have it. Those are my picks this year. Let's see what we're doing here. Holy fuck. I'm at 32 minutes right now. All right. New hold potential inappropriate message. Oh shit. Nobody's watching? Oh, what a fucking surprise. So if you want to continue to support this podcast, you can go to our YouTube page now that is viable, and we're having a lot of people, not a lot, but we're having views on the game streams that I've been doing as far as prediction wise. But again, it is what it is. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you fucking just don't watch it. If you have any suggestions for what we should be doing as far as live streaming or video content, hit us up on anything and say, hey, this would be kind of cool if you did this. I mean, we're pretty malleable with that. But if you do subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube at /WintersDozenFFL. Hit the little bell on one of the, I don't know, I'm trying to find where it is. It's somewhere around here probably, I think. Right about there. Hit that bell and you'll be notified whenever we post a new video or I start a live stream or Ty starts a live stream answering fantasy questions. That would be really cool if we have people sitting here and we can just fucking answer questions. We're not claiming to be fucking experts at anything, but we will give our best input and, try to be fun about it and all that. So check out our Redbubble store, redbubble.com/WintersDozenFFL. Just put all the logo content up there. So we have t-shirts with the logo on there. If you want to support the podcast, you want to support the Instagram page, you want to support anything that we do, check us out on Redbubble. We get money for that. So buy some shit. It'd be awesome. Instagram is always a good place to watch Kicker's Corner and any other different content that we produce on Instagram, whether that be photos or videos or what have you. So thank you so much for listening to this podcast. This is the experimental first ever live stream on YouTube, trying to get some fucking views. It'd be great if we can get some views on YouTube, because this is where the money is definitely at. And continue to support us, listen to the podcast, subscribe on iTunes. Thank you so much for listening. We are going to end this stream right now.